Hello everyone, Sharanya PS here. In the previous video lecture, I have already discussed about what is event, how the basic event handling will be done, what is delegation event model and how it will be processed, and we have discussed about the different event classes with the methods and some of the examples. In this session, as a continuation of that, I will be looking into event listener interfaces using the delegation event model, how we can make use of a delegation event model with an example Java program I will be discussing, and what is meant by adapted class, inner class and anonymous inner class with example. Here, first thing, what is meant by an event listener interface? The previous session we have discussed, I have defined about what is source and what is listener. These are the major responsible objects in order to handle this event. Source are the objects which is responsible for generating the events like button, all those. And the listener are the object who is responsible for managing the events. That is nothing but, as the name indicates, these are listening the events that are generated by any of the Java components. So what is this event listener interfaces? This event listener interface is an interface which is responsible for listening any of the events generated in the Java program. Here, the listeners are created majorly by implementing one or more of the interfaces which are defined under java.awt.event package. What is this interfaces? Interfaces are defined in Prio, which are providing some predefined abstract methods. We need not to completely, it is like it gives some built-in methods which are defined under those names. So here also it is something like a predefined classes that we are referring as interfaces. In simple terms, I have referred to. And when an event occurs, the source invokes the appropriate method. These methods are defined in the listeners. And along with that, it provides an event object as its argument. So that there will be a link generated between the source and the event listeners. Now we'll look into the different event listeners available in order to handle the event generated by the source. Here, for depending on the type of the events generated, we are having different kinds of listeners. First, coming to the action listener. These are responsible for managing the action event. Nothing but, we have already discussed what is meant by action class and which are the different sources who is responsible for generating the action event. That is nothing but buttons, menu and text fields. So when those kind of events are generated, then we are referring action listener interfaces in order to handle that. And then next one, adjustment listener. These defines one method to receive the adjustment events. These are the events listeners which are giving some methods which will be used to handle the events. And next one, component listener. Here it defines majorly 4 different methods which is which will be activated if some events are generated by components is getting hidden or moved or resized or shown. Like that, container listener, focus listener, item listener. Here it defines one method which recognizes when the state of an item is changed. Like from the radio button if we are selecting, then in that time item is in a selected state, or in the list if we are selecting some item, during those time the item this item event will be generated and it will be handled by the item listener. Like this, there are different interfaces available to handle those events which are generated by those corresponding events. We will see all these interfaces in detail. First one, action listener interface. I hope this interface term is clear. That is, it is like a method which will provide different kinds of way we can handle the events that are generated. Here, first one, under action listener interface, it defines a method called as action perform. Here, when an action event occurs internally, we have to define the method how this event need to be handled under this action performed method. That is, the way how we are using this method is void action perform, and this is the object that we are referring to connect with the event. That is action event. This is generated by action event, and this is the object that will be connected between the source and the listener. This is how there is a connection built between the source and the listener. And here inside this this is a method. So inside this method we can define what is the action it needs to perform when that event is generated. Next, component listener interface. That defines majorly 4 different methods which are generated by component resize, mode, shown or hidden. The different methods here defined are component resized. Please note, under these all different kinds of listeners, we are defining the method name. The method name convention here we use is first word will be the name of the listener, whichever it is, like for example mouse or action or key, then all those first words will be that name itself. Next word that we mention is with respect to the event, and it will be in a past tense. That is, it is already occurred, that event. For those we are referring some methods to handle. That's why here component resized. Component resize is the event which is occurred, and we are handling that event by referring to the method component resized. So here the second string or the word that we are using is with respect to the event, and first string or the word that we are referring is with respect to the which component that we are referring, which may be mouse or key or anything. Moving further, void component resized is one method, and it takes event as a object, and the component event and CE is the object name that we have referred. And one more, component mode is the second method, and third one component shown and component hidden. That is, the component can be performed these 4 different mechanisms. That's why these 4 methods are defined under component listener. And next one, focus listener. These focus listeners are activated when focus events are getting generated. What is this focus event? That is, suppose if we are giving pressing the tab button in the keyboard, and that time whichever the current active location will be highlighted in the window. That is one of the way this event is getting generated. That is, when a component obtains a keyboard focus, this focus gained is the method will be invoked. The same manner, if suppose it loses the keyboard focus, then focus will be lost. Even if we are using arrow keys in the keyboard to gain the focus, which are all responsible for managing this focus listener interface by generating the focus event. And then here the way how we are using these methods are void, focus, gain. This is what the generated event gain, and one more lost with respect to focus. And focus event we are passing the object of it. And next, item listener. These are item listener interface which are defines one method called as item state change. This method is invoked when the state of an item is changes. That is, before it will be in an unselected form. After the user selects that item, then it will be in a select state. So that state change will occur. During that time, in order to handle that, we are using the method item state changed, which is defined under item listener interface. That is the way how we need to use this void item state changed, and here we are passing the object of key. Next, key listener interface. Here key listener interface is responsible for managing the events that are generated by key pressed or key released or key typed. The methods defined under this key listener interface to handle those events are first one, key pressed and key released. These are invoked when the key is pressed and released. Same manner, key typed is a method which will be invoked when the character has been entered by the user. The way how, suppose if the user is pressing a key from the keyboard, which are the events internally it will generate? First, it will generate key pressed, along with that it will generate type, and after that the user will release the key. So, released is also responsible. So, three different methods we need to handle in such case. And one more, suppose if the user has selected only the home key. In such case, only key pressed and released will be activated. The way these methods are defined is void, key pressed, key is a small letter and pressed is the event, and we are passing the object of this key event. Same way, all three methods are defined: key pressed, key released, and key type. And next one is a mouse listener interfaces. These mouse listener interface is responsible for managing the events that are generated by the mouse, which may be clicked, entered, or which may be released. So the different methods are defined to manage those events. The 5 different methods defined under mouse listener interfaces are: first one, void mouse click. That is, we are passing the mouse event object as an argument to here. What is mouse click? If the user is clicking some elements and then after that releasing. So during that time, this mouse click will be the responsible to handle that event. And mouse entered is a method. It will be generated if the user is moving the cursor to inside the frame, or if there is some box, what we are calling it as a frame, inside that if the cursor is moved, then the mouse entered will be generated. The same manner, if the cursor is moved out of that defined frame, then mouse exited will be generated. Then mouse pressed, same way, if we are selecting something, in such case mouse pressed event will be generated. And mouse release, if we are clicked something and after that if we are releasing the mouse button, in such case mouse released method need to be handled. So these are the 5 different methods that are defined under mouse listener interface. Next one more major operation that we do in with respect to mouse is mouse motion listening. That is responsible to manage. That is, we will do mouse dragging and mouse movement. In order to handle these 2 events, 2 methods are defined. First one, void mouse drag, which is responsible if we are dragging the mouse from one location to the another, and we are passing mouse event object as an argument. And next one, mouse move. If we are moving from x and y coordinate, then this mouse move is a method which is responsible to handle it. So these, whatever we are discussing under all these listeners are all methods. So inside this abstract methods which are defined under these interfaces, we have to write the code which need to be performed on behalf of the user when those events are getting generated. Next one, text listener interface defines the one major method, that is text change. This will be invoked when the changes occurs in the text area or in the text field. The method used is text change, and then we are passing the text event object as an argument. And then window focus listener is the interface which will define 2 major methods: window gain focus and window lost focus. That is, if there is a window that is displayed, if the focus is gained, then this focus gained is a method which is responsible to handle. That is, window gain focus, and the window event object is passed as an argument. And one more method, void window lost focus and window event WE is the object name which will be passed as an argument. And one more, the window listener interface, which is responsible for managing the different events that are generated with respect to the window, which may be like closing the window or minimizing or maximizing or accidental movement of those windows resizing. So in those situations, this window listener interfaces methods are responsible for managing it. That is, first one, window activated. That is, when the window is getting displayed, that time this window activated method is suppose soon after the window is getting displayed, some operation need to be done by the user. In such case, we have to define this method, and inside that we have to write the code what need to be done. And then window closed. When the user clicks on the close button, then we are passing the object here. So what is the operation need to be performed? If suppose if the user clicks on close button, some other page, if it is need to be opened, in such cases the code we have to write inside this method. This is how we can make use of these methods. Next, window closing. Then window event WE is object, and one more method here, window deactivated. If we are deactivating this window, in such cases this method need to be handled. And then window de-iconified. That is, if we are minimizing that window and if we are maximizing that window, then window confined, once again it will be L confined will be called. That is, just we are mentioning iconified, sorry, not L, iconified. Here one convention that we follow is each time we will be using the second word with a capital letter. And when the window is open, what is the operation if we want to perform? These are all the different methods that are defined under window listener interface. And next we'll see. So till now we have seen the different the listeners which are available to handle the different kinds of events. These listeners will provide the different set of methods, like some interfaces provided one method and some other listeners provided these many kinds of methods. By using these methods, we will be handling the events generated by the corresponding components. And one major conventions that we have followed when we are defining the method name here is, first name will be the component name from where the events are getting generated, and the second word what we are writing in the method will be the event what it is generated, usually like activated, closed, closing, all these are the events. And this name that way how we are mentioning is, first this component is mentioned in a small case, and the second word, that is events, are defined with the capital letter in the beginning, and along with that we have to pass the object of each of the component. So if we look into how we can make use of these different events what we have referred, and listeners what we have discussed, and by making use of this delegation event model altogether. So the major steps that we need to follow here is, first we need to implement the appropriate interfaces in the listeners, that is the way how we need to handle the events that are generated. That is, if some event are getting generated from the GUI, then how that event is need to be handled, we need to write it in the interface in the listeners. And next, one more step here is, first we have to register those sources, whatever it is creating the event with respect to the corresponding event listeners. So whenever that source is generating some event, since it is registered with the event listeners, we can able to get some connection between the source and the event listener, and then the corresponding method whatever it is defined under the event listener can be executed. This is how the previous two steps are very important. This is what we have discussed as how it will be responded to any of the event, the different component present in the GUIs. The source and the listener, this is the two major objects what we have discussed under delegation event model. Source is the component who is responsible for generating the event, and listener is the object who listens some event and responds to that. And event is the one who is generating from the source. And along with this, in order to build the connection between the source and the listener, we are referring the object which will be giving the information regarding what kind of event has been generated. And here, for example, this is click here is a button, and action listener is the event that is getting generated, and here we have defined one method called as a button click, and inside the action listener interface, and which is responsible for managing the button click event which is triggered from the user. And how we can respond to the users generated event. Different ways we can we can write the code to manage these events. That is, first way, listener interface, how we can manage. That is, first way, direct implementation using the JFrame class. We will be using the first JFrame class within the our main class, and second one, by using another separate class, we can respond to the event, and one more, by using the inner classes, we can respond to the event whichever it is generated. and one more by using the anonymous classes. These are the four different ways we can implement the listener interfaces to handle the events. And now first way, that is the major template that we follow when we manage any kind of the event. That is first we will write the class name and implements. This is what we are referring it as a event listener. That is here the action listener. This is the responsible to manage the button generated events, button click, those kinds of events or menu selected. And inside that this constructor, what we have defined with the class name example, we are adding the registration details. That is, whichever the component we want to register with this action listener. Say for example, button dot add action listener is a method which is responsible for adding the corresponding component with respect to those listeners, and we are passing the instance of this object. And then here inside the this class, here first method that we are using, that is we are implementing using JFrame plus, just we are implements action listener, and here under action listener interface there is only one method called as action perform. So inside this, the code which is need to be executed when that event is getting triggered has to be written. So this action event, this acts as an object which will be responsible to connect this event whichever it is generated and the listener that need to get activated. This is the general template what it is followed. If we refer to the example that we have discussed previously, that is public class button click example, this is the here what we are using is the class name, and it extends JFrame, and here what it implements the event handling mechanism, that is action listener, that is which is responsible with the handling button click or the menu selected or text box, some if we are entering some elements. Then with respect to button is created here, and inside the class button constructor button click example, we are registering this button with respect to action listener. Here we have implemented the action listener. Second step is the registering. Then these are the with respect to GUI we have written the code, and then inside this we are defining the action perform method, that is public void action performed is a method that is defined under action listener. So we are implementing this action perform method, and this action event is the object that is will be referred. And then what is an operation that we are done here, that is b dot set background with respect to the component B. What we are doing, set background. This whenever the user is clicking on that button, then the background color need to be changed to cyan. That is what the operation or the action that need to be performed when the event, that is click button click, is getting generated. This is how we can handle the event. Now we'll take one example of handling the mouse event. Here we will refer the program which will demonstrate the process of handling the mouse event on the basis of delegation event model. And it displays the current location or the coordination of the coordinates of the mouse in the applet status window, and then each time suppose if the button is pressed, then the word down will be displayed at the location of the mouse pointer. Suppose if the mouse is released, then the word up will be displayed, and if the button is clicked, then the message mouse click is displayed in the upper left corner of the applet display area. And then one more operation it does is, as the mouse enters or exits the applet window, a message displayed in the upper left corner of the applet display area. And one more, if we are performing some dragging the mouse, then star symbol will be shown, which tracks with the mouse pointer as it drags. You will see these different operations that will be managed by the code. First, we are importing the basic packages java.awt, and java.awt.event is most required here, since we are managing the working with the events. And this is the code which will be responsible for defining the width and the height of the applet. Applet is nothing but that window kind what we are seeing as a output to the output screen. And then here public class mouse event is a class name, and which extends the applet features, and it implements both mouse listener and mouse motion listener. So here we are making use of implements mechanism. And here initially we are using one message with the null. We are not set anything in the initial step. Then we are using two variable mouse x and mouse y to define the coordinates of a mouse. And then this init is the initial method that will be getting executed with respect to the applets. And here we are registering the two event handling two methods, that is add mouse listener as well as mouse motion listeners. Two listeners are registered with respect to the current object. And then we are writing first one, handling the mouse click. For handling the mouse click event, there's a mouse listener interface defines the method called as a mouse click. So we are defining this method public void mouse click, and we are passing this mouse events me as a object. And then inside this we are saving the coordinator where that mouse click has occurred, that is mouse x equal to 0 and mouse y equal to 10. We are setting the values, and then we are displaying the message as mouse click. And repaint is the method which will set the applet back onto the previous way how it was there. And next mouse event is mouse enter. That is, if we are entering inside the applet window, this mouse entered event will be generated, and then which will be handled by mouse entered method. Mouse event me, and we are saving the coordinates, and then the message that it get displayed is mouse entered. And then if the mouse is exited, then we are using public void mouse exited, and mouse same coordinates are saved. Then mouse exited will be the message it displays. And then if mouse is pressed, then first it saves the current pressed location by using getX and getY are the methods which will get the x coordinate and y coordinate. These methods we have referred when we are discussing the mouse event class, and the message that it display is down. And here we have defined 4 different methods under mouse listener. Next, one more last method is mouse release. So there are total 5 different methods are defined under mouse listener interface. These are the 2 interface that we refer. One is mouse listener and one more mouse motion listener. Mouse listener, under that there are total 5 different methods. 1, 2, 3, 4 and the next one mouse released, and we are taking the corresponding x and the y coordinated values, and we are displaying the message as up. And one more with respect to mouse, one more kind of the listener which is associated is a mouse listener, mouse, what we referred as a mouse motion listener. So for that we are writing two different methods which are defined under that. That is, one is mouse drag and one more is mouse move. Public void mouse drag, and we are passing the object of the event, and then here we are taking the locations, and then we are displaying start, that is dragging mouse at that particular location and display the start. And one more mouse move, here also if we are moving the mouse, these corresponding statement will be getting generated. And here the main method is just to display all these operations. This is how the applet window will look like as the output. If we look into by executing how this is working, the same code I have written with a few more features with added. That is, some statements it is getting displayed much more. That's it. And if I run this code, first it displayed the frame, and here we could see the different operations it executed based on how I am moving the mouse. So first I have moved the cursor out of this frame, that's why it is currently displaying mouse exited. That is, this is generated with respect to mouse exited method. And now I am entering inside the window. So it is coming, mouse moving the mouse, and then it will display the location where my mouse is currently moving. You can see the location how it is getting changed depending on the movement of the mouse. And suppose currently I am dragging the mouse, and we could see the corresponding, that is mouse drag method is activated, and we have written the code inside that to get the x and y coordinates and to display that label. It is done. And then here the mouse click, suppose if I click, now currently I have clicked the mouse, so it is displaying mouse click. So this is how we can handle the different events that are generated by mouse. That is mouse click, mouse entered, mouse exited, and mouse pressed and mouse released. These are defined under the corresponding mouse listener interface. And one more interface that we refer is a mouse motion listener. Under that, two different methods, one is mouse drag and mouse move methods are defined. This is how this mouse event is handled. Next one, handling the keyboard event. Keyboard events are generated when the user is entering something from the keyboard. Maybe the three different methods that are defined under key. Here key listener is key add key listener, and one more key pressed, key release, and one more key type. So that is entering something, and then if we are pressing the key or if we are releasing the key. If you look into the code here, that is, this is how it is displaying. These are the packages, and this is responsible for displaying the applet window. And then here the method name is a simple key, and it extends applet. And here the implementation of the handler is a key listener. And initially the message and this x and y coordinate we have set with some initial values, and we are registering this key listener. That's why we are using the method add key listener with the current object by referring this. And then public void. The three methods that are defined under this key listeners are key pressed, key released, and key type. These we need to override here. That is nothing but we need to define these methods. That is show status key down, and here we are displaying key up, and here we are displaying the message, that is whatever the typed message that we are taking from the whatever it is typed by using the method get key cap. This is the method which is responsible for taking the characters which are entered by the user, and then we are displaying this information. If we look into by executing this, this is the same program with a few more features I have done. Now I am entering, so it is displays key up, key type, and it is displaying parallelly the entered data. So this is how it whatever the code I have written, based on that it works first. I'm pressing some keys. The statement, the label it displayed is a key down, and when I'm pressing release, that key up is displayed. That is soon after I entered something, after that I will be automatically releasing the key. That's that time two events will be generated. That is key down, that is key pressed, as well as key released. Along with that, if I type something, even key tagged event is also generated, and it display the message whatever I have typed. It is taking the key character whatever we are typed. This is how this program will work. And next, proceeding further, what is meant by a adapter? Three different kinds of classes we need to look into. In that, the first one is called as a adapter class. This adapter class is majorly used to simplify the process of event handling. This provides an empty implementation of all the methods which are defined under event listener interface. That is, the listener class that implements the listener interface must provide the bodies of all the methods of that interface. Here, since we are using the listener interfaces, how many methods are there in that? For all that, we have to write the code, or we need to override. If there are 5 methods, then we need to override all those 5 methods. Rather than using the blank definition, we can use this adapter class. So here, instead of implementing an event listener interface, we can extend the corresponding event adapter class and define only those methods which are required. So this Java adapter class provides the default implementation of this listener interface. Here, when we inherit the adapter class implementation, for all the method is not necessary to write, and writing the code simply is getting decreased. And here the action adapter can be defined, and it will be defined by default blank definition for all the undefined methods of those listeners. That is, adapter class is much more useful when we want to receive and process only some of the events, and that need to be handled by a particular event listener, and we need to ignore the other kinds of events. And here it majorly inherit all the adapter classes, but it not necessary to provide the implementation of all the methods of listener interface. That's why, as I mentioned, it saves the code. And here it defines a new class to act as an event listener by extending one of the adapter classes and implementing only those events which is required. In simple terms, these adapter classes are giving the simple way how we can manage the event. That is, whenever some events are generated from the source, then the corresponding listener need to be handled that event, and under that listener there will be set of methods will be defined. So normally when we are referring to the interfaces, we have to write the code for managing all those methods. To overcome this problem, we are making use of this adapter class. We need not to define all the methods that are present under the different listeners. Now, if we look into the code, what we are referring with respect to mouse event, the same code that we are using, but with the adapter class. Here we have defined adapter demo extends applet, and inside that we are registering the add mouse listener, and we are using my mouse adapter. This is the class that I am using. My mouse adapter and my mouse motion adapter are the two special classes that I use. And now inside this class, my mouse adapter extends for this mouse adapter. This mouse adapter is an interface which will help us to omit the write up of all the defining the all the methods defined under those interfaces. This adapter demo here I have created the object, and here I am referring to the current object, and here I have referring to only one kind of the method, that is mouse click. Normally we have discussed there are total 5 different methods are available. Now I have overridden only one method, that is mouse click, by using this adapter mouse adapter. And next one more here I will be under mouse motion listener. There are total 2 different methods. One is dragging, mouse drag, and one more mouse move. So here I am defining only one method, that is mouse drag. I have omitted mouse move method overriding. That is nothing but the code which I need to write inside that by using this mouse motion adapter. That is here I am using mouse motion adapter, which extends, this is the class name what I am referring, which extend the interface mouse motion adapter, and I have created the object under that, and I am referring to that interface mouse motion adapter by referring to that corresponding object. This is how these adapters can be used to simplify the code, rather than even though if you are not interested to handle that class, since it is defined under those methods, we need not to override or write the code for those all methods. Now if we look into the example here, one simple code what we could see here. This is mouse adapter example. Here only one method is overridden, that is mouse click. All the other methods I have not defined, that is mouse adapter example, since it extends mouse adapter. So this mouse adapter is a special kind of the interface which will allow us to define only the required methods or override only the required methods. So this, when I execute this, which is I have written here the code, that is set color dot blue, and in that particular, wherever I am clicking in that particular location, it need to print that color blue. This is how it works. One more, mouse motion listener. Whenever this is I have defined the interface mouse motion adapter by using this interface. Here I have defined only one method, that is mouse drag. I have not defined mouse move method. When I execute this, this is how it is allowing to move drag the mouse. Whenever I am dragging the mouse, the operation or the action it needs to perform is set color to orange. With that particular location, fill over, it needs to fill with respect to that x and y coordinate with the values 20 and 20. This is how we can make use of adapter class. Next one is a inner class. What is meant by this inner class? Here the class which is defined inside the another class, that we call it as a inner class. Here we could make up, suppose there will be different kinds of classes will be there. By defining these inner classes, we could able to access all the members present in the outer class as well. That is, here if you look into the example, this inner class demo is the outer class. Inside that I have defined the inner class, that is my mouse adapter, which extends mouse adapter. So this is the inner class which is having all the access to the members which are defined under inner class demo. And here the method used is mouse pressed, and it generates the status as mouse pressed. And here majorly this inner classes are useful here by defining these kinds of handling these kinds of methods. Just rather than defining the separate class, inside the main major class only we have defined the inner class. This is the one kind. And one more method that we use is a anonymous inner class. That is, we are defining the inner class here as well, but we are not giving any name to that. That is, here anonymous class is a class which does not have any name. That is a class which is not given a name and is both declared and instantiated in a single statement. And here the class is defined, no identity will be given inside the method. And here if we look into the way how it is defined, first we are defining any interface what we are referring, the object of that, and here this is the name what we are giving, and then public void method what we are using. If you look into the example, we'll see public class, this is the outer class what we are referring, anonymous inner class demo, and it extends applet. Inside the init method we are now defining the anonymous class, that is add mouse listener. This is the method that we are using to add the mouse listener interface, or nothing but the event. And now this is what mouse adapter is the method that we are referring. Inside this what we are referring from here to here, it mouse adapter is act as a anonymous inner class. We have not given any name here, rather we are just referring with mouse adapter. And then public void mouse pressed is a method that we are writing here, that is method, and inside that method we have written mouse pressed. This is the event that it needs to display. And from here to here, that is all the anonymous inner class will be ended up with the semicolon. That is, we have not given any special name to that. So here we cannot see any class, and then we are defining the name of that. Inside this, wherever it is necessary to be used, there only we will be writing the code. This is how this anonymous class will be working. If you look into one example here, this is inner class as well as which act as a, you see here this is a major router class what we are referring, and then add window listener, that is when the window is going to be closed, some operation we need to perform. So this is the registering process, add window listener, and we are registering window adapter. That is adapter, if we are using one major advantage, this is the interface that we are registering, which will allow to override only the required methods. Public void window closing, this is the method that we are referring. So here itself we have defined the corresponding method like interface, that is window adapter, or even we can write any interfaces like mouse listener, like that we can write any event, or a key listener, like that we can specify, and the window closing and window event, and what it need to print. Thank you, window is now closed and it is going to be exited. And here this is the closure of this, and this is the closure of this method, what we are referring it as a add window listener. Here we have closed this, and this is responsible with respect, we have given this, we have written all these code without mentioning any class, so that's why it acts as a anonymous class, and we are ending up with the anonymous class with a semicolon. If you run this, this is how it will be displayed, and when I close this, it is going to be closed, and actually here it is going to be display the thank you, window is now closed. This will be the statement it is going to be displayed. And if we look into some of the questions which we have covered under this session are write a short note on event listener interface and explain any two interfaces. We have looked into starting from action listener to till window listener. We have discussed many listeners. You have to explain all those listeners with different methods defined under that, and explain the mechanism of delegation event model, how it is going to work, and with respect to the keyboard event program. And one more program that we have discussed is a handling the mouse event by using this delegation event mechanism, and how the inner classes are used in Java. With example, we have to write the way how that inner class is defined and what is its benefits, and one example we can write. And then the role of the inner class and anonymous inner classes in Java. We have looked into both with the examples, and various sources of the events, as well as the adapter class, what does it mean and why it is used. These are the different topics that we have covered, and these are the kinds that are questions can be asked under these topics. Thank you for listening.